Before we get started with the software, I wanted to spend just a moment to talk to you a little bit about the format of this particular software program. Meditech's Web Ambulatory is a web-based product, meaning that instead of an icon on your desktop like you're used to today with NPM, instead you will use a web browser such as Internet Explorer or Google Chrome. In this instance, based on information from Meditech and our own trials, we have determined to use Google Chrome for the best user experience. When we do go live with the software, you should have Google Chrome installed on your PC with a link to the website for Web Ambulatory. In the meantime, it may be necessary for you to download Google Chrome from Google's website. Log into the system, we're going to double-click here on Google Chrome. Remember, if you don't have that installed on your computer, you're welcome to use Internet Explorer. Just know that you'll likely experience some speed and scrolling issues. And remember that Google Chrome is the preferred website. So we'll just double-click here. We're going to type in the web address. And for the web address, it's ambulatory.hancockregional.org /handtest /. And when we do go live, that website will be the same, except we'll take off the test and it'll just be hand /. But while we're in the test system, we'll use hand test. Hit enter and it'll take you to this login screen. You're going to type in your login ID, and this is the login ID that you used. So for me, it's KHIAT, and it's at, for the domain, you do at hmhhs.org, and there are instructions on the screen for that. So you type that in, put your password in the next box, and click sign in. And then you'll get this choice to select your ring. Again, this is the test ring. When we go live, you'll have the live option, or it may launch you directly into the product. This screen is asking me to pick my job, and for you, your job would be the mnemonic for your facility, so AFP, HFP, NPFM, and then your role. So it would be either clinical support or clinical staff or front office staff or provider, whichever your role is. So I'm going to stick here with Web Ambulatory Core Team and then click Sign On here in the bottom. Now from this screen, it's asking me which screen I want to launch to. Some of you may already launch, of course, to your home screen, but if you do have a dual role, you may either go to clinical home screen or office staff, depending on your role. In this instance, I'm going to pick office staff. You will not have to do this because I have multiple facilities. I have to pick the facility that I want to be associated with. So I'm going to go ahead and say HFP here. Click OK. And it'll launch me here to my login screen. And this is what your office staff home screen should look like. I want to focus first on this black bar at the bottom of the screen. Now for most of you, unless you're using a touch screen, that black bar will be at the top of your screen. First icon here is the return to icon. What this icon does is, as you go through the steps in the program, as you go and open different screens, the program will remember where you've been and give you the opportunity to go back there. So let's say that you were in the middle of looking up something for one patient and you got distracted by another patient who was maybe at the window. If you don't remember the patient's name or you don't remember where you were, all you have to do is click Return To, and it'll take you back to where you were. So for instance, let's say I was in the patient summary for this patient, James M. test. If I click there, it'll take me right back there. Now once I'm done with that, maybe I want to close that out because I don't want to get confused. I know I'm done with that. If I hit the Return To, and then the little X next to it, so patient summary here, the little red X, it'll turn red, you click X, and it'll take you out of that, close that one down. The only other function here on Return To is this Close All. Close All works kind of like a logout function, so if you hit Close All, it will close you completely out of the system and you'll need to log back in. Next up here is our home button. Now, say for instance we're in this patient summary screen back again for Mr. M test, and we want to go home. Simply click on the home screen and it'll take you back there. If the other way that you can get back to home is if you click your return to and office staff home, it'll take you back home. So those are two ways, and this black bar really should follow you throughout the program. So anytime that you want to go back to home, you can just click the home button and take you right back to the home state. I'm going to skip scheduling grid right now. We'll cover that in another section, but just know that if you want to see your office's schedule grid for the day, what everybody's listing of patients looks like, you can click the scheduling grid there. Next up is the patient summary screen. Now from the patient summary screen, we can do a number of different things. We can view active appointments, so we can view most recent appointments here, and you'll see our list goes quite a ways back here. And it's in chronological order, so from most recent to oldest. We can view for all facilities, so we can view for everywhere within the network, or we can also filter down to just what appointments are here at our facility. If we end up on the patient summary screen and don't see that the patient is scheduled, perhaps they're on the phone and want to schedule something, we find their patient summary screen, we can click here and it will take us directly to the book function for this patient. So you can book directly from the patient summary screen. Now we will go over booking in another section. The other thing that we can do here from the patient summary screen is we can review information about the patient and update their information. So we can see here that if we had any comments, we could put those comments in there. This patient doesn't have any comments, but if we wanted to have any special comments, we could put those in there. Special indicators, we could add special indicators or review the special indicators. And special indicators are a listing of special information for your patient. So perhaps here's a listing here of the special indicators. Common ones I think in the outpatient will be, is this patient a member of the ACO? Is there an advanced directive on file? Does this patient have a fall precaution or some kind of isolation or infection precaution? Just some common special indicators for you in the ambulatory world. To add a special indicator, we would just select the one that we want to add. And then save that information. And you'll see here it's updated my special indicators. Compliancy and membership. This section is designed to show me how consistently this patient shows up to appointments, what other offices this patient is a member of. I can review any outstanding orders, so if the patient called with a question about a lab they were supposed to get or something, I can see that order detail here, and any outstanding referrals. Patient's demographic information, and if there is a change, I just click on the title here, and I can update any of that information here on these screens. Insurance, guarantor, etc. We'll cover some more about these in a later section. So from the patient summary, you have the ability to go in and review and update a lot of information. It's a pretty powerful screen for the front office. One other quick note I want to make about the patient summary screen is in the patient summary screen you'll get this either a picture or a silhouette of your patient. This one is, again, in test. We've added a lot of different not real pictures here. But we also might have a patient silhouette. You can click on that image or that silhouette and it'll tell you information about the patient's portal. So if for some reason you need to know whether or not this patient is the user of the portal, you can review here that yes, this patient is the user of the portal, it's for themselves, and the last time that they accessed the portal. So it gives you some information regarding the patient in the portal. There's some other places that shows up, and I'll try to point those out as we move forward. Next icon here is the clinical chart. So if you have a need to go to the clinical chart, maybe to print off immunization records or review office visit notes or see whether there were messages, the clinical chart is a great place, is where you should go and do that. So we click here on clinical chart. It brings this listing of the patient's chart. Now this first screen here is called the summary screen, and each of these sections is called a widget. And the way the software works is it pulls in information from different pieces of the chart and collates it into one section. So, for instance, if we had a need to review the immunizations, we have an immunization widget right here. We can see a list of dates. Anytime you have the title with a blue underline, that generally means it can pop over and give you more information. So we click here and review our immunization information. When we needed to print that off, we would click Immunization Summary, and then we would click Print and OK, and then we could print our immunizations for that patient. Now, anytime we get a blue box like this, one of these pop-over boxes that you need to get rid of, you've maybe reviewed your information and you're done. Sometimes they'll have an exit and save up here in the right-hand corner. Other times they have left those out. If you need to get away from this blue screen and you don't have an exit or save, you simply need to click outside of that blue box and it'll go away. You can move on to the next thing. So in your practice time, spend some time kind of going through the widgets and see what information from a front office perspective you would need to see and not see. If you need to review the office visit notes, for instance, or maybe see whether or not there have been messages sent around a certain activity or a certain time period for that patient, Activity is a good place to go for that. For each office visit where the documentation has been completed, you should have in chronological order the office visit listed and then a report from that office visit, an office visit note. So here, my office visit on April 8th, the patient saw scientific medicine provider, and it kind of gives you the listing, the office visit for that patient. If for some reason you needed to print that and provide it to the patient, you could click here and print that, or provide it to someone else. Again, if we're done, we've got this blue box. If we click outside of it, it'll go away. If you wanted to see whether or not a message was sent, if you click here on All Activity, sorry, wrong section. If you click here on Categories and you change that to Patient Messages, then you're only going to see the messages, and you can go through and review what medication or what messages were sent on this patient. If we just click on one, it'll bring up the message and you'll be able to see the activity. You want to see that if this one's not the right one, instead of going out and looking for the next one, you can just click Next, and it'll keep bringing those up until you find the one that you want. Or you can always go out and pick another date. Another place you might commonly need to go is here in the Diagnostic tab. So for some reason you need to print off a copy of the labs for a visit. If you go here to the Diagnostics tab, you should get all the diagnostics that patient's had, including laboratory, X-ray, MRI, all of those different types of diagnostics. And next to each should be a report of some kind. So you can click on the report and it'll bring over that report. If you click on the result, you can get more information. And if there were a specimen report associated, you would get over here in this area a specimen report where you could actually review the report from the laboratory, which is what you would likely need to print off and provide. Another section you might commonly need to visit is medications. So if you need to review information about the medications, say you get a call from a patient, they want to review their meds, and you need to review and see verify what information the patient gave you with what's on their list. You could review here the medications, and it will give you a listing of their current medications. That's kind of a quick overview of the patient's clinical chart. Feel free in the test environment to take a look around and see what information is available to you. Next up, we'll talk about workload. Back on our home screen, the workload here, this workload is a listing of the workload that you have for your patients. If you click on the workload icon down here, or you click on any of these items, it will launch the workload panel here. And you'll see here's your workload list. Now workloads work today much like tasks do today in today's system. So you get information from auto-generated information from the hospital, or messages from provider or other support staff with questions about medications, or asking you to do something with the chart or with the patient's information. And all that will come to you in workload. Now it works much like an email system does, but the great thing is that it can connect you to patient information. So we'll go here to test star. And we see that there was a message here asking that this patient gets a CPE schedule within the next 3 days. So this is a typical message that you would receive, so you know that you need to go in and schedule that patient. So you could schedule the patient, let them know, and you could mark this as complete. You have some other functions here besides complete. You can reply or forward if you need to send that on to someone else to take care of, or if you need to get more information or maybe request additional information. You also can mark unread so that it shows up as unread on your list. So if I do that here and I refresh my workload, I should see my workload here eventually bump up one. If maybe you don't need to be on the list anymore because your piece is done, but there are more components of this workload task that need to be done, you can click Remove Me to take you off of the list, and then it'll stay an active task, but you just won't be part of that list anymore. For now, I am going to skip statistics and cash drawer, but we'll move on here to schedule a meeting. And if you have access to schedule a meeting, this is the way that you would schedule, add a meeting to the calendar for either your providers or your office staff, whoever. You could add a meeting to the schedule. So say we're having a staff meeting, and you would be able to pick from your locations here, talk about how long that meeting is and where it's going to be held. And look, again, we don't have all these built. It's automatically going to pull in the resources from the location selected. If you only need certain people and you don't need to block the calendar for others, you could mark those. You could click the red X here to take those away. And anybody that you highlight, you can move and take their red X away. If for some reason you need to add people, you could just add the participant there and then click the Save button to save that meeting to your schedule. Once you had updated that with date and time information. Go ahead and cancel out of that. Next up, we have our phone book. Now, there's still some work to do here on the phone book, but basically what we'll have whenever we get the phone book fully implemented will be a listing of people within the person dictionary that you can search for information and serve as a contact information book. Now, at this point, you're not able to add those yourself. That will come directly from the provider or from the person dictionary. There'll be more information about that whenever that's actually up and fully functional. Manage portal, we do not plan on having this as an available option for anyone except for the portal registrar at this point. This More button is where you can review certain reports, set different preferences. There's not a lot of functionality on the office staff side for the More button. There's not a lot of options you have to select. So don't anticipate that you'll spend a lot of time in More. Here we have the Compose button, and this is how you would go about starting one of those workload streams. So if you didn't have one that you were replying to and you needed to start one or send one, you would click on Compose and add the required information. So if it was about a specific patient, you would pick patient, search for that patient either by birth dates or partial name, and then say choose the patient, and that patient is associated with that message. So when it gets saved, all the information from that message will get associated with that patient's chart. We choose a type, we choose who it goes to, and then we can send that message. The other thing with messages is we can choose a priority, so high, medium, low, and then users are able then to sort their messages by the priority of the task. Again, if we decide we don't want to send it, if we just click outside that blue box, we'll end up right back where we were before. Patient summary, this is just another way to search for a patient, and we can either type a birth date in here, and the important thing about birth dates in the new system is you don't have to do the B before anymore. You can just type in the birth date, and we can search for a patient that way. Or we can type in the name, and for the name we need to do last name, comma first name, no space. When we do that, it'll find our patients. If we spell their name correctly. There we go. And then I can select my patient. And I'll get to his patient summary screen. Log off logs you off the system. And this green dot lets you know how good your connection is. So if you have a yellow or red, that means that you're having some latency. So if you're experiencing some slowness, that might be the reason. And last, we have just a settings button that, again, you probably will not be accessing on a routine basis. Before we move on to the rest of the home screen, I want to spend just a minute and show you another function here of the Compose. So if we click on Compose, you'll notice that we first have Mr. Amtest. We had him selected, so it automatically has associated his account with this message. If we go down here to types, we have several different types, but the one I want to focus on here is the patient RX refill request. When we click on that type, we end up here with, you'll see here at the bottom we have not only the pharmacy, the patient's preferred pharmacy, but we also have a listing of their medications. So this is just a nice way that the system goes about automatically pulling in that information for you and not requiring you to type all that in. And I suspect it's something like it works today. So all you have to do if you want to send a message about more than one, there's a little checkbox next to it. If you just click those checkboxes, and then, of course, choose your receiver. So we'll send this here to Dr. Serberg. And choose the priority, and then hit send. You can also, if you need to put in additional information, like patient would like, 3 months worth because she's going out of the country or whatever, you could put that information in there in this blue box, start typing, and then hit the send. And then it'll go on its way. So I just wanted to kind of point out that's a nice way that the system has to really help support us. Okay, now I want to move on to the rest of the home screen here. So it's basically, you'll see it's broken up into 3 columns. Our first column here is our schedule. Now, we can look at today's schedule, which on today's schedule, I don't really have anybody scheduled for today. We can go back to previous days or future days to see who's on the schedule. We'll go back here. Anytime we want to go back to today, we can just click this today icon and it'll take us back to today. I want to stay here on the 12th because that's where I have my patient scheduled. If we wanted to go into a day, 2 months in the future or a specific date, we could click on that and move forward that way and just select the date and it'll take us there. From here we can also print the schedule. So if we wanted to see a printout of the schedule, if we had several patients listed, now for me, for this purpose, I only really have scheduled 1 patient, but if I had a full list of patients for the day, I could search here, enter the patient's name and be able to search and bring up the patient by that, or I could search by different time frames, or sort by different time frames. So if I wanted to see, instead of by time, I wanted to see by patient name or provider, I could do that as well. Next column we have is workload. Now this is just a listing of your workload. We covered workload in an earlier section. For this purpose, this just sort of is a listing of your workload. Anytime you click on one of those items, it opens up the screen that we showed you before where you can actually interact with them. Once we're done, we send our message or whatever, we can go back to the home screen. We'll be right back where we were before. Moving on to the third column here, we have our to-do list. And the to-do list is nice because you have, it's sort of a built-in system way for you to build a list of reminders for yourself. So if you needed to call a certain patient, or you needed to maybe remember to order office supplies or whatever, you just click the plus sign here, input the information, and once you click out of that box, it'll put it up there as a task for you to do. So that's kind of nice. If you're done with that, you remember to do that, you place the order, you could put the checkbox to say it was done. If you wanted to delete it altogether, just hit the red X and it goes away. The last section down here is your quick link section. Right now we only have the Meditech website loaded here, but there are you can add, this section is for you to add any website that you routinely need to go to. Now we'll show you later on, you do have some websites preloaded for certain authorizations for like prescription eligibility and that kind of thing are already loaded into the check-ins or to the check-in screens. But if there are other links that you routinely need, those would go right here. Now right now we don't have the ability for you to add those yourself. So if you do have some that you would like to have added, just let the help desk know, put in a case ticket, and we can work on getting those added to your profile. That's it for the home screen. Next we'll talk about the cash drawer. To open the cash drawer, you'll go back down here to your black bar and you have this cash drawer icon. You click on it. Now for you, the only cash drawer you'll have access to is the cash drawer associated with your practice. But again, we're in tests, so I have access to a lot of different cash drawers. So we were working in Fortville. So if I click here on the Fortville Family Practice cash drawer, you'll see that it's closed. So if I highlight it and then I go up here to the green open, It's going to ask me for an opening amount. I don't know how much you have in the drawer in a given day, but let's just say it was $75. So I click here in the opening amount column or box, put $75, enter, and then I get the save. You have to hit enter for some reason to get the save button to activate. So I hit 75, enter, save, and then my cash drawer is open for the day. So we're ready to see patients, collect information, collect co-pays, do that throughout the day, and I'll show you, of course, how to do that when we get to check-in and stuff. I'll show you how we can collect co-pays. Then at the end of the day, whenever we're done, we'll have to go back in and close our cash drawer. And to do that, we'll want to run a report on our cash drawer just like you do today. So we'll go here on the right hand side under drawer totals. We'll click this listing here under reports, and we'll pick our drawer detail. It's going to ask us for a date, so we'll pick today's date, and then we're going to do the Fortville cash drawer, from and to Fortville cash drawer, and then do print just like you do today, and then scan to the same location that you have been scanning to. So none of that's really changing. And once we do that, we click on that Fortville cash drawer again, and we hit the close button, and we put in the closing amount. So let's say we started with 75, we've closed with 250. You put in 250. And again, you have to do enter, and it gives us this error. So of course it recognizes that we haven't really captured any money today. So I'm going to hit the close. I'm going to back and say, no, you know what, I was dreaming. I actually only have 75. Enter, and then click save. And I've closed my cash drawer. Do that same process every morning when you come in. Whoever opens the drawer will open the drawer, and then you can contribute to that all day long, and then at the end of the day close it, or generate that report and close it. And that's pretty much how the cash drawer works.